Over the past months, a profound transformation has taken place inside the United States. Quiet, subtle, almost invisible to the average observer, yet powerful enough to redefine the country's internal structure and its role on the global stage. The Supreme Court's recent decision in Trump versus Casa is at the center of this shift. At first glance, it might look like just another legal case in a long list of political battles. But in reality, it represents a fundamental rewiring of how American power functions, how institutions interact, and how the next decade of economic and geopolitical decisions will unfold. This ruling arrives at a moment when the world itself is undergoing seismic change. China and Russia are strengthening their alliance, global markets are reorganizing, countries are reassessing their alliances, their energy dependencies, their currencies, and their military strategies. And in the middle of all this, the United States is facing internal pressures unlike anything seen in generations. To understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look beyond politics and focus on long-term structural forces. That means looking at the world through a lens similar to the one Warren Buffett uses when analyzing companies or entire economies. A lens that focuses on fundamentals, on incentives, on value, and on long-term stability rather than short-term noise. When we do that, the picture becomes much clearer and, frankly, far more concerning. The Trump v. Casa decision is not simply a modification of legal interpretation. It is a milestone in the redistribution of institutional power. It influences how the executive branch can act, how federal agencies can enforce policies, and how future presidents, regardless of party, will be able to shape the nation. When the balance between branches of government changes, the ripple effects spread into the economy, the markets, and the global perception of American stability. Meanwhile, on the international stage, China and Russia have tightened their partnership to a degree that would have seemed unimaginable 20 years ago. Their collaboration extends from energy and raw materials to transportation, manufacturing, and military coordination. By combining China's industrial strength with Russia's natural resources, they form a strategic bloc that challenges the very foundations of U.S. influence. For decades, the United States could rely on its dominant position in global trade, the widespread use of the dollar, and its unmatched military reach. But every one of those pillars is now under pressure. The dollar's dominance is being questioned as more countries experiment with alternative currencies for trade. The American industrial base has weakened after decades of offshoring, and internal political divisions have eroded public trust in institutions that once seemed unshakable. This is the environment into which the Trump versus Casa decision was delivered. And when you observe this combination of domestic vulnerability and international realignment, you begin to understand why this moment is so important. The ruling affects how quickly the government can respond to crises, how effectively policies can be implemented, and how stable the United States appears to the world. And remember, markets, whether financial markets, energy markets, or geopolitical markets, do not just react to what a country does, they react to how stable, predictable, and united that country appears. From an investor's perspective, uncertainty is one of the greatest threats to long-term value. When institutions are in conflict, when legal frameworks shift suddenly, when political divisions escalate, the country becomes less predictable and therefore riskier. And when the United States becomes riskier, global money begins to look for alternatives. That means more investment flowing toward Asia, toward emerging markets, toward commodities, and toward physical assets like energy infrastructure and rare earth minerals. It means less reliance on the dollar, less trust in U.S. Treasury bonds, and more interest in gold, in oil, in technology hubs outside of North America, and in countries with growing populations and expanding industrial capacity. While the United States debates internal issues, China is building new trade routes, expanding its technological dominance, and strengthening control over supply chains that the world depends on. Russia, despite sanctions, has redirected its energy exports to Asia and strengthened ties with countries that are eager to diversify away from Western influence. Meanwhile, nations across the Middle East, Africa, and South America are forming new alliances that reduce their reliance on the United States. These changes might seem abstract, but they have direct consequences for ordinary people. When global confidence in U.S. institutions weakens, the value of the dollar can fluctuate. Inflation becomes more difficult to control, borrowing becomes more expensive, energy prices become more volatile, and long-term economic growth slows. This is why understanding Trump v. Casa matters. It is not simply about one politician or one presidency. It is about the long-term balance of power in the United States and how that balance affects everything from trade deals to military decisions to the stability of global markets. The ruling signals a shift toward a more flexible, less constrained executive branch, a shift that can strengthen or weaken the nation depending on how it is used. Historically, countries that thrive are those that maintain a strong institutional framework, an industrial base capable of producing essentials, and a population united around shared objectives. When any of these pillars weaken, the country becomes vulnerable to external pressure and internal fragmentation. So what does all this mean for you? First, it means that understanding institutional changes is essential. These changes influence interest rates, taxes, wages, job markets, and long-term economic stability. They shape how businesses operate, how investments perform, and how secure your financial future is. The more you understand these shifts, the better positioned you are to adapt. Second, it means thinking globally. The world is moving toward a more multipolar structure, where no single country controls everything. The United States will remain influential, but it will no longer be the undisputed center of global power. To succeed in this new environment, you must broaden your perspective. Look at emerging markets. Look at long-term technological trends. Look at where resources are located, where innovation is happening, and where populations are growing. Third, focus on fundamentals. This is where Buffett's principles become invaluable. In times of uncertainty, strong foundations matter more than ever. That means investing in real value, productive industries, essential resources, solid companies, and long-term opportunities. It means avoiding excessive speculation, emotional decisions, and short-term thinking. Stability, consistency, and long-term planning become your most powerful tools. Ultimately, the world is entering a new era, one defined by institutional evolution, shifting alliances, and the restructuring of global power. Trump v. Casa is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, but it is an important piece. It marks the beginning of a transition that will shape the next decade of American politics, economics, and influence. The question is not whether change is coming. It is already here. The real question is whether you are prepared to understand it, adapt to it, and navigate it with clarity and confidence. If you stay informed, think globally, and focus on long-term fundamentals, you'll be ahead of 99% of people. Because while most will react emotionally to the headlines, you will understand the deeper forces at work, the forces that truly determine who rises, who falls, and who leads in the world that's emerging right now.